Message to temporary employee. On behalf of the entire organisation, we would like to thank you for filling in tonight. We do not doubt the offer arrived last minute, and we apologise for any inconvenience this may have caused you. Our usual night watchman had a family emergency, so you are doing us a huge service by being here tonight. On top of these expressions of gratitude, you'll also be compensated 5 times the average hourly rate. The temporary employment agency has been informed of these unique circumstances. Hopefully, they briefed you on the agreement ahead of time. At first glance, your duty for the night may appear simple, but we strongly urge you to stay vigilant. For the duration of your shift, you will remain at your post in the reception area. Your job is to ensure no one enters after hours. The door you entered through is the only entrance into the compound. All employees are aware the night watchman is the only person permitted in the building past operating hours. You are unlikely to run into any trouble, but we operate under the belief it is better safe than sorry. Just remember to stay in the reception area during your shift. Thank you again for filling the position. We are confident in your success. P.S. The doors deeper into the facility are chained for your convenience. You are the only person in the facility, and the chain should not be unlocked for any reasons. No exceptions. I finished reading the letter for the second time and looked back at the key sitting on my desk. I hadn't noticed it when I first walked in because it was underneath the paper with my instructions. I hadn't tried to use it, but judging by the size, I was almost certain it fit the padlock, keeping the doors in the postscript of the letter chained. With the paper still in my hand, I made my way to the doors. The majority of the reception area resembled a doctor's office in both furnishing and sterility. There was even a stack of beat-up magazines on the coffee table in the middle of the sitting area. Saying the chained doors stood out in the room was an understatement. They were thick metal pocket doors that, even when pulled together, appeared to have a lot of unseen service area deep into the wall on either side. The tops and bottoms of each were reinforced to the point where I was pretty sure a truck would have a hard time getting through. The handles of each door bolted and welded tight to the surfaces. A hefty metal chain snaked through both of the handles and held together by a substantial padlock. Both doors were covered in stickers reading some variation of "Warning, door must remain closed at all times," more than a few written in different languages. For a short time, I stood in front of the massive doors before returning my attention to the key on the desk. I tried in vain to piece together why someone would say there was no exceptions to keeping a door closed but leave the key so easily accessible, especially someone who didn't even require a proper background check before being hired for a single night. I threw my hands up, waving the white instruction paper as a sign of unconditional surrender. It wasn't like this job had been conventional from the start. Jobs I got from the temp company usually came with information about necessary skills or a description of duties ahead of time. This offer hadn't even listed the name of the company. I hadn't heard of Homodynamics before walking up to the strange hourglass logo on the front door. Before reading the instructions, the only thing I knew about the gig was it was a night shift, the address, and the obscene amount of money they were paying. Unfortunately, the last piece of information was enough to ignore the red flags. I was falling behind on more than a few bills. Making 5 days worth of money in a single night would let me pull my head above water for the first time in a long time. Retreating back to the desk, I placed the key on top of the instructions, folded the paper, and slid it to the far side of the desk. There was a younger version of myself who wouldn't have hesitated to unlock the industrial doors and explore the secretive company's compound. But the decisions that version of me made was why I was in my 30s working temp jobs to attempt to make ends meet. So I was happy to sit behind someone else's desk and be grateful I had been able to pay off my data plan last month. For the first few hours, keeping myself occupied was really the only difficult part of the job. Around 3 in the morning, I had gotten bored of social media and my battery was starting to die. I had just started flipping through an ancient highlights magazine and wondering why any kid would be hanging out in this waiting area, when I heard something. At least, I thought I heard something. A faint slam that could have been something falling off a shelf or a door closing somewhere on the other side of the chain doors. I looked up from a spot the differences photo comparison I was embarrassingly struggling to find the final difference in and looked towards the door, straining my ears to see if there was any follow-up to confirm I had heard something in the first place. A little while passed in complete silence. I closed the Wrinkle Kids magazine and made my way back to the coffee table in the waiting area. I was in front of the chain metal doors when there was another bang, either louder or closer than the last one, and unmistakably the sound of a door slamming. I stopped mid-stride and turned my head towards the chain doors, the hairs on my arm and neck at attention and my mouth suddenly dry. In my mind, I reread the part of the instructions telling me I was the only person in the facility and there was only one way into the building. Another extended period of total silence, but I wasn't able to shrug this one off. I could feel my heart beating in my chest, but I was feeling bold. I came to the decision that if I could get closer to the door, I might be able to hear better. If I didn't hear anything else, I could chalk it up to a door or two being blown closed by a breeze. I made my way towards the chain doors, being sure to walk as quietly as possible, deep down hoping if someone was in the building, they hadn't realized I was here too. Standing below the doors, they looked more massive than my first impression. Again, standing quietly, trying to hear anything on the other side of the door. I closed my eyes in some attempt to focus more on my hearing. There wasn't another slamming door, but a few times I thought I heard something. A repetitive, soft tapping just at the edge of my range of hearing. But it was possible my mind was playing tricks on me. I understood what needed to be done. With my eyes still closed, I carefully put my ear against the cold metal door. I kept my breathing shallow and steady to not pollute my ears with any extra noise, and I listened. I didn't hear anything right away, but as my ears adjusted, I could tell there was definitely something making noise beyond the doors. A chill washed down my back, and I realized it was closer to me than the slammed doors had been. The taps were constant in their production, but not in location. Moving back and forth around the building, sometimes getting closer and other times farther away. Footsteps. I stifled a gasp when I came to the realization. I was certain they were footsteps, but there was something off about them. There were too many at any given time to be a single person, but they moved too uniform from place to place to be a group of people. A cold sweat came over me when I started wondering what a combination of that information could mean. I knew I needed to get away from the door and let someone know, but my instructions hadn't left any contact information. Pushing gently away from the door, I wondered if there was maybe a phone number in the desk's drawers. I was only halfway through the thought when a metallic clatter directly behind me shattered the silence. I opened my eyes and looked down at its origin. A children's activity book I'd completely forgotten about was tangled in the chains, causing him to make contact with the metal door. I clenched my teeth and hoped it hadn't been noticed. For a short silence, I was hopeful. But that hope quickly evaporated as I heard the footsteps. Far away at first, but getting closer fast. The continuous thud of far too many feet closing in directly on my location. Without breaking my eyeline on the door, I backed away from the approaching clatter, dropping the magazine that sold me out in the process. My back pressed against the exit when the thing first made contact with the chain door. Sudden, heavy pounding erupted from the other side. A moment ago, the door seemed impenetrable, but now I watched as it shuddered with each hit. Turning to the exit, I placed my hand on the knob, but it wouldn't turn in my hand. I looked down for some sort of latching mechanism, but there wasn't even a keyhole. The realization I'd been locked in from the other side hit me in waves. With the slamming getting only more intense behind me, I desperately pushed on the door with my full body weight. For a few moments, I was lost completely in my goal of escape. I was flooded with so much fear, I hadn't even registered the assault on the chain door had halted. I was still trying to force the exit open when I heard the voice. "Excuse me, is someone out there who can help me?" The voice spoke in a calm, disjointed manner. It sounded like it was coming at me from all directions. I abruptly stopped pounding on the exit and felt my shoulders relax. Without really thinking of why, I turned back towards the warning-covered metal doors and stood silently. I was unable to answer the voice's questions. "Thank goodness you are there, friend. It is embarrassing to admit, but I fell asleep at my desk and they've mistakenly locked me in here." I took a step towards a large doorway, still unable to speak to the voice, but for some reason, that inability didn't seem very important. "I'm going to guess you aren't the usual guy. I apologize if I gave you a scare, friend. Would you mind doing me a huge favor and grab the key off the desk beside you?" I continued to slowly move towards the chain doorway, but I veered a little to my right towards the reception desk when he said this, my hand hovering over the folded paper where I had left the key. What a wild situation, right, friend? Usually I just wait for the workday to start, but my phone is dead. I bet the wife and kids are worried sick about me. Just go ahead and grab that key. My attention still on the door, I grabbed the paper and dumped the key into my hand. "Friend, you're a lifesaver. You'll need to stick around after your shift. The guys aren't going to believe me when I tell them. Just put the key in the lock and let me out." Moving briskly now, I clutched the key in my hand tight enough to draw blood. My other hand reached out for the lock before even getting to the doorway. I have no doubt I would have opened the door if I hadn't stumbled on the highlights magazine on the floor where I dropped it. The unexpected movement breaking me out of whatever hold the voice had on me. I winced as a sudden explosion of pain entered my head. "Friend, come on now. I just need you to put the key in the lock and let me out. Don't make me wait here all night. I'm starting to get hungry." The voice sounded less casual and now held an undertone that was delicately less human than before. Still, I could feel it washing over me again and felt the need to unlock the door. So, I did the only thing I could. I lightly slid the key between the crack where the pocket doors emerged from the wall. It was easily big enough for the thin key to slide through, but far too small for my hand to get it back. An immediate cacophony of pounds met the other side of the door when the key left my hand, the large metal slab shuddering against the attack. I retreated once again to the exit on the other side of the room, but I didn't try to get through this time. It was clear my only chance of safety was the chain doors. For hours, the thing beyond the chain doors alternated between besieging the door with its might and silences while it recovered its strength. Each renewed assault seemed like it would be the last, but the metal doors shook against its attacks, but they never gave out. After a particularly long silence, I assumed the thing was preparing for a final charge. Instead, the exit door I was pushed tightly against gave way, and I fell backwards into the early morning light. I blinked in surprise, looking up at a confused man wearing a lab coat. I recognized the familiar hourglass logo embroidered over the name tag that read Dr. Brown. "Jesus, are you still—" Dr. Brown started to say, but caught himself before he finished. "I mean, you must be the temporary night watchman. Nice to meet you." Maybe I should have pressed him for answers, or even gotten up and punched him. But in that moment, I just continued to lay on the ground in disbelief. "Well, looks like great work tonight," Dr. Brown said insincerely, while craning his neck to look in the reception area. "Looks like the door is still locked. Do you mind heading back in for a coffee or tea?" I was on my feet before he finished the sentence and sped out of the parking lot as fast as possible. My last memory of the building was Dr. Brown in my rearview mirror while on the phone. From his body language, he didn't seem happy, and it didn't look like he had any interest in going inside.